In Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super, a recurring theme has been that characters have undergone transformations which have made them more powerful and allowed them to stand on the same kind of tier and even playing field or surpass all of the others that they had previously been limited in terms of their power. And when it comes to that, we know that the Saiyans have their transformations, but when it comes to Namekians, do they? As far as we know, Namekians only really power up either through training or through fusion with another Namekian, as we saw with Piccolo and Kami and Nail, so on and so forth. But the question remains, if Namekians had a transformation, what kind of transformation would it be like? Hey guys, it's Mike here, and welcome to another video we're bringing you today about Dragon Ball Super, in which we're going to continue to ask that question: what would a Namekian transformation be like, and what would a good idea for them having a transformation be? Because we know that it's possible they won't have one, but it would be an interesting idea for them to institute and maybe put Piccolo and some other characters of a similar race on the same playing field. So to join me, someone who is our resident Piccolo expert. His name is...
Alrighty guys, it is Qaaman here today.
So Qaaman, if Piccolo or Namekians in general had a transformation, what would you foresee that transformation being like? How would you like it to play out? And what exactly do you think it would entail? Like, would he just get bigger? What would he do exactly?
Well, I know this is not canon, but this is always something I've always kind of thought about, Mike. You did make a good point. I've never visualized Namekians and actually having like a transformation like individually per se. However, Dragon Ball Multiverse, I know it's not canon, it's a fan manga, but they did bring up a point that I thought was kind of interesting. And they brought up the concept of all of the Namekians fusing into one, into this character by the name of Gas Korloth. Yeah. And although a lot of people thought that that was a very silly idea, I always felt that that was kind of interesting to some degree. Because if all of the Nameks kind of merged into like one super powerful Namek, how dominant would that Namekian be and how strong would it be compared to other characters? Would that increase their regeneration abilities? Would that increase their herring even more? Will that increase their speed a lot more? Can they grow even bigger in size and, you know, and possibly other areas if they even have that body part that I don't feel like describing? I've always felt that a multiple Namekian fusion is something that I would have found interesting for the Dragon Ball series in case of a crisis.
Now, let's say that they would unlock a transformation that isn't necessarily fusion-based then, because obviously that is true. The idea of this character who is literally the fusion of every Namekian seems like he would be ridiculously powerful. I mean, even if there's only hundreds of them, look at how strong Piccolo got just by fusing with Nail, or the massive increase he got by reuniting with Kami. But let's say that, for instance, we bring up that Namekian Book of Legends they only referenced once in Dragon Ball Super so far, and say that perhaps Piccolo or somebody looks deep into that book and finds, oh, wait a second, there's been a different transformation all along. It's a single transformation that Namekians can reach either through some sort of specialized training or by focusing their ki or something like that. How do you think that transformation would work for a Namekian? Do you think it would be strictly power, or do you think maybe it would have more of something in line with body manipulation? Because I kind of foresee something like a Martian Manhunter, where they can just completely control their body and their molecular structure, and not only become bigger, but let's say smaller too, like Ant-Man, for example. They could shrink down and kick your ass at a really small scale too. But what would you think would be a possibility?
Well, that's a very interesting point, Mike. I mean, one thing I've always wondered too is, let's say all the Nameks fused together, they could, you know, obviously, like, let's say Piccolo fused with like Guru or something. Like, because of how intelligent Guru is, I think that would have increased his mental abilities too. And we also saw this later on in the Majin Buu arc, when Buu absorbed Gohan and Piccolo, he got significantly more intelligent. So I think that would increase their knowledge for their ability to fight. And I think in addition to that, I think what would work for the Nameks is something more along the lines of body manipulation, because since Namekians have been shown to have very acute senses, I think that could have increased their ability to increase their senses during a fight, which would give them an edge. Now, in terms of power, the only problem is the fact that outside of Piccolo and Nail, and I guess if you count a movie character in Lord Slug, how many Namekian fighters are there? And not counting Kami, because Kami and Piccolo were supposed to be the same, and King Piccolo obviously wouldn't count. How many Namekian fighter characters are there that could have made a significant difference in Piccolo's power, or anyone's power? Like, besides Nail and Kami, like, who could Piccolo really fuse with at this point that would make him much stronger than what he is? The answer is no, because all of the Nameks that we've seen, their power, especially at this point in the series in terms of scaling, is so much behind that I don't think power-wise they would really gain that much. But the Book of Secrets thing is definitely interesting.
Yeah, I mean, even though the Namekians are much weaker than Piccolo, I mean, we don't really know how their fusion works. So, I mean, even if Piccolo got, like, 2 times stronger with each fusion, I mean, that could still add up significantly once he fuses with, like, everyone. But if we're referring to simply the warrior class, no, that is a much more difficult thing to say, because there aren't many of them. I mean, unless Mori on Namek starts pumping them out, you know, just starts spitting them all up, we're not really going to see many of them. And regardless of that, Piccolo not only was a special Namekian, and the nameless Namekian originally, you know, from the Dragon Clan, but on top of that, he's been training for decades and decades and under specific special ways. So I couldn't really see any other Namekians really becoming that. But I feel like Piccolo being able to do something like Martian Manhunter and manipulate his body, increase his regeneration by leaps and bounds, you know, change his form to become bigger or stronger, you know, kind of like what the Saiyans do where they pump up their muscles, except in a more, you know, in a way that actually works for him. I feel like something like that could help. But ultimately, like, whether or not a transformation would necessarily even the playing field, unless it has God Key involved, I find it really hard to believe.
Right, and you know the whole thing about how Piccolo, it's shown in the anime. He always trains with himself by like splitting up himself and like training.
And that was an idea from Toriyama.
Right. I was just gonna say that like Toriyama actually said in an interview, or I believe in one, and if I remember correctly, it was in one of the Jump interviews. He was saying how like he always visualized that, and I was thinking, maybe if Tien could do something like that, or maybe the other Namekians, they can possibly like manipulate themselves so that they can get stronger by pretty much splitting up. That's always something I always thought Namekians could do to get a lot stronger, if that's an ability that they could learn. And I felt that that could have helped them for like future defensive assignments against, you know, potential villains.
Or Piccolo could split in 2 and he can then do the fusion dance with himself and do that over and over and over again, for reasons. But yeah, overall I feel like in the end, I feel like a transformation for Namekians would be interesting, but at this point in time, unless they create some kind of idea like that Book of Secrets or like that Book of Lore, or whatever it happens to be, like Mori seeming to know it and Piccolo doesn't because he lost his memory, unless they do something like that, I don't really see it happening, because there's no way I don't see Piccolo having unlocked it through his training at this point in time. But then again, I guess you can't really train for something you don't know it doesn't exist, you know? So this has been our thoughts talking about this possible transformation. Let us know your own thoughts down below if you think maybe it's a good idea and what your kind of idea would be to look like. I mean, it'd be cool if somebody made some fan art, you know, just to show us. I mean, even if it's a stick figure, it'll be something. So let us know down below, and don't forget to check out Qaaman's channel for all your Dragon Ball and every other need you really need, because his videos, man, they'll do something to you in a big, good, positive way. So check them out, and don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and as I always say, stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future. Qaaman, the Namekian transformation would never be as muscular as me.